Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Ned Bellavance, Ned1313 on Twitter, and welcome to the Daily Check-In for August 11th, 2020. Yep, it's still 2020, and it has been an interesting one, hasn't it, now? Yeah, last night, before I went to bed, I said to my wife, what fresh hell is in store for us tomorrow? And I was joking, and then I woke up and went downstairs, and there was an army of ants walking across the windowsill above our sink, and I was like, oh, well played, 2020. Well played indeed. Well, I don't want to talk about ants, though. Today's topic is Terraform 0.13 has gone GA because it is Terraform Tuesday, one of my favorite days of the week. Was going to be Taco Tuesday, but that didn't quite happen. I might talk more about that in a moment. A couple housekeeping items. I just recorded an episode of Heavy Networking on the Packet Pushers podcast or Packet Pushers family of podcasts. That should be coming out on August 28th. It was an awesome discussion about Ansible versus Terraform. And while we started it out as sort of a which one's better kind of thing, it actually turned into an interesting and involved conversation about where both tools shine and why you may or may not want to learn them. So if you're interested in that, once the link is live, I'll put it in the description. But in the meantime, you can just go to packetpushers.net, subscribe to their full feed, which also includes my podcast, Day 2 Cloud, or just subscribe to Heavy Networking and you'll get the episode on August 28th. All right, the other housekeeping item is I still have my Terraform certification guide, which now needs to be updated for 0.13 because some of it's not right anymore. So I will be updating that shortly. And the good news is for you, because it's published on LeanPub, any updates to it, you automatically get once you purchase it. So head on out there and, the link is in the description. If you want a copy, it's only $15 and you get updates forever. It's not a bad deal. Anyway, let's check in. How are you? How you doing? Things going okay? It's Tuesday. Are you going to have tacos tonight? If so, what is your favorite taco recipe? What's your go-to protein? Do you make your own guacamole? I'm just curious about what your ideal taco is. I don't have one, but I do have some favorites. And the one I was going to make today, I didn't have quite enough time for. I like making al pastor tacos, which is pork and pineapple. But in order to do it properly, you have to take pork shoulder and marinate it for a few hours and then get it prepped and then put it in the oven for a few hours. It's a whole process. And sadly, I ran out of time this morning. I couldn't get the prep started. So that just threw everything off. And now I'm not making tacos al pastor, but I'm going to try to get it in tomorrow. So it'll be Taco Wednesday, which taco any day is pretty good. I also got a face mask with tacos on it, which is amazing. Anyway, let's talk about the main topic, which is Terraform 0.13 went GA as of yesterday. That's pretty exciting, right? It's not nearly the momentous change that Terraform 0.12 was. Anybody that was using Terraform prior to 0.12 definitely went through a big change because that was the change from HashiCorp language 1 to 2, which changed a whole lot of how the syntax was structured inside of it. And there were a whole bunch of other changes. That's its own video. I couldn't possibly do it justice here. 0.13 is nothing like that. It's more of an incremental step towards the 1.0 release that's somewhere in the future. So I just wanted to step through a few of the improvements and a few of the changes. And I've actually done videos on a couple of these when the beta came out. So I'll reference those and maybe put a card or two up there for those particular improvements. So the first one, and I did a video on this, was improvements to the modules. If you've been using Terraform for any length of time, modules are important to you. They're a way to take a common set of configuration and use it repeatably across multiple other configurations. You put it in a module. But the problem is modules did not support the count meta argument or the for each meta argument. So if you wanted to create multiples of a module, you just had to put it in multiple times. There's no way to really easily control this. There were some ways around it, but they were very hacky. Now you can just use count or for each like you would anywhere else in Terraform, and it will create multiples of that module. So that's like super thumbs up. I say for each is probably going to be more prevalent because when you're creating multiple instances of a module, you probably have multiple key value pair settings that you need to input for that. And that's more of a for each kind of thing. The other thing that they added to modules was depends on, and I didn't realize this wasn't supported for before, but now you can put depends on in the module as well. So that's exciting. A lot of good improvements for the module. The improvements for providers are also really interesting, and I think they'll have the larger long-term impact on what's going on with Terraform. So there were two massive improvements with this. One was the third-party auto installation feature. So providers were hosted in the Terraform registry, and before it was only officially supported providers were available. And there was a whole list of them. And when you went to the documentation for providers was part of the Terraform docs site. The documentation for providers has been moved to the registry, and all the providers have been moved to the registry, not just the officially supported ones, but also verified third-party providers and community providers are all available from the registry. And now if you put one of those providers in your configuration, it will automatically download that provider. It will also automatically download from a private registry if you have one of those. So that's pretty exciting stuff. Before, you had to manually download those things and put them in a special folder if you wanted Terraform to use them. You can make use of those by putting in a required providers block inside your Terraform larger block, and it will automatically download those for you. So that's pretty exciting. That's especially useful if you use any of these third-party or verified providers. And I think that is going to cause the ecosystem of providers to explode because the barrier to entry is now much lower. And also the barrier to consumption is much lower. So long-term, I think that's going to be a huge change, and we'll just have to see how that evolves over time. Another thing that's in there, and this was an experimental feature in .12, and I did a whole video about it, so I'll throw a card up here for it, is variable validation. So now you can add custom validation for your variables. When someone submits a value, you can apply a regex or just a simple test. Is it greater than a certain value or equal to a certain value? Whatever, comparison operators you want, and determine whether or not that's a valid value for the variable. And if it's not, you can stop things right there. That will allow you to, make sure your inputs are good before you get to the stage of actually trying to use them in your configuration. And for things that are very persnickety about their input, that's kind of cool. I think that's going to be heavily used inside of modules that will be on the Terraform registry. So I have a feeling if you watch the space for the Terraform registry for modules, a lot of them are going to start getting updated to use this block. But it's only going to be supported with Terraform.13. So it's going to be a push and pull right there. Another one is, and I wasn't sure about putting this in, but I think it's kind of cool. They've added another supported remote state storage backend, and that's Kubernetes. So now your remote state data can be stored as a Kubernetes secret. So that's kind of cool. If you are heavily using Kubernetes otherwise, here's an opportunity to use it even more by storing your Terraform state as a secret in Kubernetes. I don't know if that's what I would go with, but it's an option. You can certainly do it now. So I might give it a try, see how well it works. I mean, you can really store anything in a secret. So JSON data, why not? Let's go. The last thing, and this is more just like a usability thing, is if you've ever made changes to a configuration just with the outputs. So you're like, oh man, I need to add this one output so I can see the information, or it's linked to another module, or I'm using the remote state as a data source and I need that output to be part of it. If you run Terraform plan, Terraform will tell you that no things have changed in your configuration, so there's no need to do anything else. And then if you run Terraform apply, it'll apply and submit and spit out the new outputs. But that's kind of annoying that it tells you that there's nothing that has changed. Now, if you update the outputs for your configuration and run Terraform plan, it will tell you those outputs have changed. And then when you run apply, it will show you those new outputs and make them part of the configuration. That's awesome. It didn't do that before. One caveat with that is if your output values change every time you run the Terraform configuration, then every time you run Terraform plan, it's going to tell you that there's a change to the configuration. So you just have to be careful with that and whether or not you want to enable it. So important to understand that that is now a capability, and it could mess with your automation a little bit if you don't prepare for that ahead of time. So That's everything that I have to say today about Terraform 0.13. I think it's a great release. I've already, messed around with the betas a little bit, and I really love some of the new functionality and features that have been added. And of course, it means I'm gonna have to go update my study guide. So look for that in the next week or two. That'll do it for me. Tomorrow is Wednesday and it's tech analysis. So I hope you'll join me then.